It is my privilege to introduce the ambassador of Yemen to the United States, Dr. Ahmed Awad bin Mubarak. And I ask that you try to project yourselves as much as humanly, psychologically possible into the shoes, souls, situation of any ambassador of Yemen to really any country. The country has been involved in a civil war for the last several years. It doesn't look as though it will end by the completion of this conference, but there's a momentum, a haraka in that direction. This individual has had a central role in the international components of the effort to end that conflict, and not just the international aspects, but the domestic ones. And so just hear me out for 3 or 4 sentences on the latter. He's been the chief of the Presidential Office of Presidential Affairs of Yemen's last legitimately elected president. He most importantly, gained the trust and confidence of innumerable factions, forces, phenomena in Yemen to have a national dialogue conference. Every single political faction, ideological group, school of thought, and different political tenet came to that conference, was adequately represented. Ask yourself, if you're an American during the United States Civil War 150 years ago, how would you have determined who would come to a conference to end America's Civil War while the war was still being waged there? I think it would be beyond most of us. It would be beyond me. But this is what this individual was tasked to do. And we're not talking about a couple dozen. We're talking about more than 560 registrants, attendees, participants, or representatives in that conference. And what was that conference supposed to do? It was supposed to diligently work and leave no stone unturned in ending the Civil War. Secondly, it was to try to reach an agreement on what would be the reconfiguration of Yemen's governmental structure and its system of political dynamics there. And on top of which, seeing the end in sight, and we'll have another speaker from Yemen on Yemen later today, how would humanitarian assistance reach Yemen? Through what means, and to what degree, and with regard to what timing, and with regard to what leaders and deputy leaders, with so many stakeholders in the future and the present of Yemen. This is the individual who was tasked to handle those kinds of responsibilities. We Americans have not been accused of having a surplus of empathy. But here is a case where let's make the effort. And certainly I'm going out on a limb and saying I believe it's not an unfair stereotype to say that more Arabs are effective in empathy as it pertains to the United States than are Americans empathetic pertaining to any Arab country, any Middle Eastern country, any Islamic country. And the United States, given what it is, what it has been, what it is yet to become, and all of its power, might, and influence, it is understandable if the United States is on the radar screen of every Arab foreign relations leader. But the reverse is not the case. And here's a chance to try to remedy that, however partially and marginally, maybe ineffectively. But the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And we have the ambassador of Yemen this morning to help us in that regard, Ambassador Mubarak.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor to address to you on behalf of my country, the Republic of Yemen. Allow me at the outset to express my gratitude and appreciation to the National Council on U.S.-Arab Relations and my dear friend, Doc Anthony, for the very excellent organization and arrangement of this conference. Indeed, the National Council, since its establishment in 1983, under the able stewards of Dr. Anthony, has been able to enrich the relationship between our countries, in the Arab world, and the United States, with its noble educational mission and through its various programs, publications, conferences. So thank you very much. Excellencies, I come today with a heavy heart, and as much as I'm delighted to be among you today, I must say that I am saddened by how much things in my beloved country have become worse than before since our last meeting here. I wish I can give you a happy story, one that deserves to be told to describe Yemen, a country known for its beauties and depth in history, a country which has endured with centuries with a rich heritage and a proud people, a country that was full of life and happiness that an ancient Greek geographer couldn't but simply name her Happy Arabia. I'm afraid that the story I'm about to tell you is far from happy. Nevertheless, as in my nature, I'm certainly still optimistic. Dear friends, in the United States during the last century, and as Andrew Carnegie very eloquently put it, capitalism and its industries have turned luxury into necessities. And as Americans strive in their pursuit of happiness. In Yemen today, war and its atrocities have made the opposite effect. They turned the necessities into luxuries. The issue, however, is not about availability of food or an legged blocked as prototyped in the media that made many people so vulnerable. Yemen is facing humanitarian crisis due to the conflict and the action of the Houthi Saleh forces, which if left unaddressed, will exacerbate further the dire situation on the ground. I remember a time several years ago in Yemen in 2011 when I was among those who took the street to protest the rule of a dictator during the early winds of the Arab Spring. In pursuit for a better future and dignified life, people back then wanted a change, and they made it. Within 1 year, Yemen was on the road becoming a true happy story. We had the will, we had the roadmap, and we had also the international community blessing and support. The GCC initiative was not perfect, but it was the best outcome endorsed by the Yemenis in an open election in 2012. The initiatives made it possible for Yemenis, including youth, women, civil societies representatives, and even the Houthis, to participate in a comprehensive national dialogue that yield outcomes capable of building a new Yemen. But when ousted dictator, who still had his network consolidated by 33 years old of corrupted regime, and an Iranian-supported militia realized how much this genuine democratic process will deprive them from what they can achieve by force. They orchestrated a coup in September 2014 and took Yemen hostage. The rest is history. Dear friends and colleagues, as Yemeni ambassador to the United States, and also as the Secretary General of Yemeni National Dialogue Conference, I'm sometimes asked by many concerned friends of Yemen, why cannot we stop the war? Why not end the Arab coalition intervention? The truth of this matter is, if it weren't for the Arab coalition intervention in March 2015, Yemen would have been in a much worse situation. The war in Yemen didn't begin in March 2015. And if the coalition stops today with no settlement, the war certainly will not, it may not, attract as much attention in the international media as it does today. But the suffering of my people, the Yemeni people, will nevertheless continue. The Houthis, even though participating in the national dialogue, have proven to be not inclined to accept a democratic process. Till this day, the Houthis continue to refuse to change to a political party. Their leader continues to believe that they has a divine right to rule and looks for the Iranian model as an inspiration. In 1 year alone, starting from December 2014, before the Arab coalition intervened, many thousands of people were detained and killed, including activists and journalists by Houthis. Hundreds of residential houses belonging to their opponents were demolished, and thousands of children were recruited into their war campaign. This atrocity continues to this day. The Houthis have even started detaining journalists loyal to Saleh, their ally and partner, as the friction between them intensifies. My dear friends, there is no need for a military solution in Yemeni conflict. The ending, it is in the hands of the Houthis and their ally Saleh. Yemen is not complicated as Syria, and all the components of the solution are there based on the three agreed upon references for peace: the GCC initiatives, the NDC outcome, and the UN Security Council Resolution 2216. On the other words, we have a solid ground that we can build on. The Houthis and Saleh need to realize this and know that there is no other way around it. And I know that the positive signal sent by the new US strategy on Iran will make this possible. The Houthis and Saleh in the past have benefited and even misread the genuine efforts by the previous US administration to end the war. The US high-level meetings with the rebels had an opposite effect and fed the rebels' illusion of power. That a political recognition in the future is possible if only we could hang on a little bit longer, or so goes their logic. The new US approach in the region, however, makes clear that the US will not allow Iran or its puppets to destabilize the region, export terrorism and violence, or threaten freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. The message is strong, and I'm sure we will see positive results in the next round of peace talks, which we look forward to attending. But the question now is how we convince the Houthis and Saleh to come back to the negotiation table. I believe for that to happen, the UN Special Envoy Ismail Wuld Sheikh Ahmed, whom we fully support, has to start the conversation over three topics. 1, initiating and maintaining a ceasefire. 2, resolving the Hodeidah port and city issues. 3, reopening Sana'a International Airport. As for the first issues, the de-escalation and coordination committee, which was proposed by the UN and agreed by all parties, must be reactivated for any future ceasefire to be sustainable. We know this, the UN knows this also, and the Houthis know this as well. We, as the Yemeni government, have been sent our delegates to this committee a long time ago, but we're still waiting for the Houthis to join us. Second, the UN envoy needs to push harder his last proposal on the city and port of Hodeidah, which was accepted by our government and succeeded not to have a military campaign in this area. The Houthis simply cannot be allowed to continue abusing Hodeidah port. As for the third issues, the government has repeatedly stated that it has no objection to reopening Sana'a airport, provided that the airport officials, civil officials and personnel be allowed to go back to their jobs under the UN supervision. I hope the UN envoy will succeed in this task ahead and call upon the international community to make more pressure on the Houthis and their allies to heed the UN Security Council call and come back to the negotiation table. Today, Yemen needs her friends and allies more than ever. Indeed, only hard times reveal true friends, and Yemen is a strategic friend to the United States. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity, and I hope that next time my story will be with a happy ending. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, would you take a few questions? Among those that have been submitted are the views of the American Congress, or rather members of the United States Congress, that know relatively little about the dynamics of Yemen, but are aware of a coalition that has been formed to help support the objectives that you mentioned. And the one that the members of Congress seem to single out or emphasize the most is the position and role of Saudi Arabia. More so than that of the United Arab Emirates, and earlier Bahrain, as well as Qatar, and even Sudan, and several other countries. So the first part of the question is position and role of Saudi Arabia. Can you please clarify it? Because the media is making a big issue out of this, and here's a chance to influence clearer, more accurate thinking and analysis of Saudi Arabia's position and role, and as a factor going forward, or also even until now in your civil war.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the way that the media here, they cover the war in Yemen, as it is between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and as it is between rich country, which is Saudi Arabia, and poor country, which is Yemen. As I mentioned in my speech, that the war started actually when the Houthis occupied the capital, and before that when they attacked Amran, that it was in early 2014. The Saudi campaign, or the Arab Coalition campaign led by Saudi Arabia, started in 26th March 2015. More than 8 months after the Houthis, attack and occupied the capital, and the Saudis respond to the legitimate government Bela, and President Hadi sent letter to his brothers, the leader of the GCC states, to help Yemen, and we didn't choose at all the war, the military solution. We spent all we did all our best to avoid this war. We spent more than 2 years in heavy dialogue. We invited the Houthis, Saleh, and even they were overrepresented in the national dialogue. and we did our best just to avoid this war. But then, when the Houthis, Saleh, decided to break all the political process, the only option that we have is to defend our democracy and our state, and we depends on our brother in the region, especially the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because Saleh, he used all his networks and also the army that he built during the 33 years based on regional and tribal bases against the republic and against his people. So I think this is one of the corrections that we have to make all the times, and the clarification that we have to make all the times, just to describe that the conflict in Yemen is not between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. Most of those who are fighting on the ground are Yemenis. From the entire Yemen, from all over the country. It's not a war between south and north. It's not a war between Sunni and Shi'i. We don't have that at all. It's not between Shafi'i and Zaydis. It's between the legitimate government and its national army and the rebels, and the militias backed by Iran, militias, repeating every day, death to America, death to Israel, curse to the Jew, victory to Islam. And they are educating our kids now. Now, new generation, they made radical change in our curriculum. So, and they invented all this new ideology to our, education system. So I think if the West, if the United States doesn't understand these issues, I think we all will face, more complicated, crisis and problem in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Another one is with and without regard to what you mentioned, that the issues are not between Sunni Islam and Shia Islam. We accept that. Can you come at it from a different perspective, and that is Hezbollah, rooted in Lebanon, and having an enormous influence and power in the government and the political system of Lebanon, has been. Can you comment on the degree to which it has been delegated by Tehran to play an intrusive, supportive role backing the Houthis and to a degree Ali Abdullah Saleh? They bring the advantage of having Arabic, not that many Iranians do not also speak Arabic, but not to any West the same degree per capita. And if you could explain to the audience the concept of, and I'll try to enunciate it slowly, Vilayat Faqih. It is associated with what the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini introduced in Iran after the Shah hit the fan in 1979 in Iran. And not even all Shia in Iran embrace this concept, and assuming there are even fewer who embrace it in Yemen, can you come at the issue somewhat differently? Because Ali Abdullah Saleh is Shia, the Houthis are Shia, many Yemenis are Shia, but you're right. That's not as big an issue as the media makes it out to be. And I speak from the vantage point of having been the only American official observer for all of Yemen's elections for president and parliament from 1993, 97, 2000, 2006, et cetera. Sorry for the long-winded question, but many aspects of Yemen are complicated, and they cannot be dealt with superficially with sound bites.
Thank you very much again, Dr. Antoni. I think we didn't use Sunni Shia in Yemen, so we describe ourselves as, Zaydi and Shafi'i. And again, it's not between Zaydi and Shafi'is. Majority of our national, big portion of our national army who are fighting now, the Houthis, are Zaydis. I heard many times that because of this conflict, Iran got the chance to have more influence in Yemen, as it was as before this conflict, the Iranian wasn't in Yemen and they didn't have any hands, or fingers in the crisis in Yemen. And just I want to mention too, the Jihan 1 and Jihan 2 ships, which has been reported by the UN, the Yemeni authorities, and it was full with weapons from Iran, and that it was recorded in most of the UN reports. Many of Hezbollah elements, when I served as a security, as a chief of staff for President office, personally I received a letter from Hassan Nasrallah asking us to release some of the detainees because, and he admitted this is a mistake, will not be repeated. So, and he asked us to release those detainees. Now we have a lot of proof, and there are many reports and records, films about the presence of many Hezbollah elements and the Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, training the Yemenis, Houthis, and some elements in Yemen. A lot of reports, of that the Iranian they delegate Hezbollah to handle the Yemeni issues in behalf of the Iranian. And I think there is a real attempt to have a version of Hezbollah in Yemen. I think this is the vision of Iran, to have Houthis in Yemen, and I'm happy that in the new strategy towards Iran, announced by this administration, they describe that they will not allow Iran and their puppets in Yemen, which is Houthis, to benefit from that. Just give you an example about how they were, the influence of the Iranian. That now in Yemen now we have what they call the unity government, which is consisted between two groups, Saleh and Houthis. But above that, we have what they called the Supreme Revolutionary Committee. And this committee, it's associated with the spiritual leader, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, and it's something similar to Wilayat al-Faqih, which you just described. So actually they are trying to follow the Iranian model as an inspiration for to them in Yemen. This is clear for most of the Yemenis, and I think this is one of the main reasons why most of the Yemenis are rejecting the Houthi ideology.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Ambassador, you've opened our ears and eyes to some of the complexities of Yemen. We have a lot of other questions, but for reasons of logistics and operational dynamics, I'm unable to ask them now. But he's very accessible, affable, amenable to anybody coming up and asking him any questions there. He doesn't stand on ceremony or pretense. This is one of the delightful aspects of the people of Yemen. Please join me in thanking the Ambassador of Yemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr.